Welcome to The Gailey Show. We celebrate LGBTQ culture and entertainment here in Minnesota. You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I am your host, JP Darabagosia. As we're kicking off today's episode, got to let you know that everybody's favorite cowboy masked singer, Orville Peck, is going to be at the Armory on June 11th. Get your tickets now. They're going fast. I think the floor is only standing room only at this point. So you can go to armorymn.com to get your tickets. It is the Stampede Tour new album, Duets album, just dropped. If you haven't seen Orville's duet with Willie Nelson, I was about to say Woody Nelson, Willie Nelson, about how cowboys are gay, I really recommend watching that. But what I'm really excited to talk about today is local author Patrick Nathan, who is joining us here in our virtual studio to talk about his new novel. I'm holding it up for the camera because it is gorge. When I saw you, Patrick, post it, I think I was on Blue Sky or the evil one that I shall not name. I fell in love just on the cover, and then everything inside of it made me love it even more. So, Patrick Nathan, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm Patrick, local novelist, also store manager at Subtext Books. That's basically the important things, I suppose. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So
you have a wonderful radio voice.
Oh, well, oh my gosh. You come back anytime and give me that compliment. So tell us about The Future Was Color. What can we expect when we turn to page 1?
Well, what can you expect when you turn to page 1? So my protagonist, George Curtis, is a Hungarian immigrant living in Los Angeles in 1956. He is a screenwriter for B science fiction and monster movies, working out of the studio system in Hollywood, kind of at the tail end of McCarthyism, but it's still very much prevalent. And he gets mixed up with the wrong people.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And it is has a special honor for this month. It is a book of the month club pick, correct?
Book of the summer at the LA Review of Books. Yeah, it is the summer book club pick for the Los Angeles Review of Books. So I am very, very excited and honored about that. And it's a great book club pick. I think everybody should pick it for their book club, actually. It should be everyone's summer book club pick, no matter the book club.
It really should. And I'm gushing, and you've seen me gush already once before. But it really, you had me at McCarthy era studio system, that 1950s Hollywood. I absolutely adore that time period and those movies that are set there. Movies are set there, but also novels, right, that are set there as well. And I just really appreciated the setup that you give us for beginning to explore queer life at that time period. So you came to the inspiration of this novel was actually at a local cafe, right? Or restaurant?
Yes, I was at the Bad Waitress, rest in peace, which I used to work at all the time. And they had, up until they were kind of transitioning in ownership, and they remodeled and took everything off the wall, which was very sad. But they had all these science fiction movie posters all over the walls. And as I described it elsewhere, science fiction before Kubrick and Star Trek. So it was, very cheesy, Forbidden Planet kind of stuff. And they had a poster that I must have seen 1,000 times. I sat under this poster over and over again. But it was for a movie called Earth versus the Spider. And the screenplay was attributed to somebody named Laszlo Gorog. And, I immediately knew that was a Hungarian name. I'm not Hungarian. I don't speak Hungarian, but anybody can spot a Hungarian name from very far away. And I immediately knew that, there are many reasons why a Hungarian might be in Los Angeles in the 1950s, but there's only one major reason. and kind of imagined what it would be like to leave a very cosmopolitan European city, living in a, fairly bohemian, intellectual, artistic milieu, and then being thrust into this sunny, perfect place where nobody really wants to talk about anything.
I really appreciated you have so many different queer characters in Los Angeles specifically. Well, I mean, in both locales that the book takes place in. But what surprised you as you were writing these different characters about queer life that you were discovering in the 50s in LA?
Oh, man. So this is the rare question where it does actually pertain to a little bit of research that I did, because everybody likes to talk about research and they're always disappointed when I'm like, I didn't really do any. But there is one book I read, The Lavender Scare, and I think it's Kevin Johnson. Yeah. And it's very much a book. It's more about Washington than it is Hollywood, but they were definitely intertwined. And kind of getting the sense from that book just how widespread and not out in the open, but definitely on the tip of everybody's tongue, so to speak, this awareness of gay life was, and how everyone was just dripping with like casual homophobia. It was just always coming out the same way that it would come out about, Black people or immigrants or women or communists, I suppose. And it was just something that was always getting dropped into conversation at parties, even though, nobody actually was gay, Certainly nobody they knew, certainly nobody you and I know, but it was just how pervasive the whole thing was and how huge it was, even though, you go back and read a lot of things from the era and it's not there. And it kind of gave me permission to be like, well, what if everyone this actress knows is basically someone who is queer? And she's kind of created this little, fiefdom for herself.
We are going to continue this conversation on our YouTube channel and everywhere that you get your podcasts. The Future Was Color, now out on June 4th. Buy it everywhere that you buy your books, indie bookstores, and ideally subtext bookstores. But Patrick...
also, I do want to say we are doing a launch party at Majors and Quinn on June 4th.
Oh,
7 p.m.
okay.
7 p.m. June 4th, Majors and Quinn. Come get the book signed. Come say hi. Come ask me a question. And we'll have a good time.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the novel. We're going to continue this conversation on our YouTube channel and everywhere you get your podcast. For now, we are going to get into some affirmations for Pride Month, which is actually, it's a really cute book. Affirmations for Queer People. Just came out today. But, okay, continuing on. So as you're doing your research, right, with Lavender Scare, what were you finding is either inspiration for, or just how each of those folks, queer folks in the novel, are trying to navigate this closet, navigate this, threat of the Red Scare or being looped into being named a communist? Like every single character takes a different tact at it. So did you do that intentionally? And I want to show each of these different, archetypes of navigating, the closet as you were, or was it just like you wanted to use them as foils for George?
I think it was actually all very organic, and it's not something that I really thought about until afterward. But you have George and Jack, who are essentially peers in a way, who both work for a studio. They both work in the same office, and there's, mention repeatedly in the book of, these are men with references, men with lawyers, men who will sue for libel, but they're also not wealthy men. They're not necessarily very powerful. Walt, who is Madeline's husband, is a kind of an example of somebody who can afford to be a little sloppy. He's somebody who does have a lot more power, a lot more access, a lot more push. And then you have somebody like the other Jack, or Jacques, as they come to call him in the book. And, he's just kind of a street twink, and he doesn't care. You can do anything. He can say anything. He can be anywhere. He has the freedom of being kind of at the bottom of the class, hierarchy. And doesn't exactly come with a lot of physical security. But certainly he's not going to lose his job because he doesn't really have one.
He works at the movie theater, right?
Right, exactly.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So it was just kind of it kind of came about organically, and it was a fun way to kind of play with the I guess, literally it's the intersectionality of kind of the queerness of the time.
Mm-hmm. Something else that I found very compelling was how George Hungarian lost family in the Holocaust, if I can say that. I don't think that's giving away spoilers there. And then there's the Hungarian, I don't know if revolution, right, against the communists.
The 12-day uprising, where the kind of the Hungarian students basically demonstrated in public that they no longer wanted to be a part of the Soviet system, and they wanted to form their own government. And George is kind of, after being disconnected from this for so long and feeling like, his homeland is long gone, he's watching this revolution unfold through newspaper articles, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it rekindles a kind of political hope and an engagement that he had long thought that was gone. And that's part of what ultimately seduces him into Madeline's, reach, is that she offers him time and space to write. Except, not really.
Madeline's home in Malibu.
Right.
I was like, where do I apply for that writer's recidency?
I know, right?
Something that I also appreciated about it, right, as and it's not the same experience of Armenian Americans and Hungarian, right, Americans, but having to think about how you're going to engage with these ideas of resistance to communism, and Armenia was a Soviet republic, right, as well. And so, how do you engage with that without then being named a communist, right, yourself? And seeing how both the community navigated that here in the States and dealing with that in France, where my family ended up. It just, you really did an excellent job of threading that needle of how do you deal with the fact that you're here because of genocide, you're here because of, totalitarian regimes, and then you're still you can't even have the freedom to fully engage with it here in the US because of, the various ways that they can, blacklist you, or, the Red Scare / Velvet Scare. So I think that was very well done how you did that.
I'm glad to hear that. It's always nice when you just try something, you have no idea what you're doing, and then somebody's like, hey, actually this is really good, and you're like, well, that's great.
Okay. No, I want to talk to me about that, because you seem like you just have this amazing imagination that you can just jump in and do that. Tell me about your writing process.
Oh man, my writing process. So, what's the best way to kind of answer this question? So I kind of have a shoot first and ask questions later kind of approach to writing. If something feels true for the story, I'll just put it in there, and then I'll just check it later. And there's a lot of actually playing with history in this book. It is historical fiction, but at the same time, there's a lot of things going on that are flat out ahistorical. Um, there's a sequence in New York in the book, and the characters are there in the late 40s, early 50s, and there's these performances happening all over the city that are very reminiscent of the happenings movement, but those actually happened in the 60s in New York. And I basically bumped them up about, 15, 20 years. There's a battleship that gets put to sea about 6 months later in the book than it does in reality. There's a few things that I tweaked to suit the book because it felt truer for the book than it would have if I had tried to stick to reality. And, every time you write a novel, you're basically building your own universe anyway. So you might as well make sure that it's faithful to that universe rather than arbitrarily faithful to history, I suppose. But as far as getting to that point, how do you put something down on paper that feels true? It's so I realized after writing my first book that I'm very much not a kind of vomit it all up and clean it up kind of writer, like a lot of writers tend to be. You go to workshops and you go to programs and you go to classes and stuff, and then I always say, like, the important thing is just to get it down and, just write the draft no matter how bad it is. And I guess once upon a time that was helpful for me in the sense of just proving that, yes, I can get something down. And especially when it came to writing a novel, I was like, intimidated by the idea of putting 100,000 words on paper. But now that is a very destructive way for me to work. And essentially what I do with most of my projects, especially fiction, is I will kind of have this amorphous shape in my head of like what I want to do. And I'll write down notes. I'll say, at some point, there needs to be this kind of scene. At some point, this needs to happen. At some point, he will meet a character who lives in an apartment with a, weird painting and, whatever.
Yeah.
And, but I don't really plot. And before I can get anywhere, I basically have to identify, I find the door. I identify where it's going to start. I identify the first sentence, and I will write that sentence over and over and over. And then that turns into the first paragraph, which I will then write over and over and over and over until it feels right. And then it kind of expands to the first page. And then I will do the first page many, many times. And that's usually when it clicks. And I feel like I've found like the right voice of the style of the piece. And once I find the style, the rest of it just goes like that. It's there. And what ends up on the page after that is actually very close to what you will end up reading. Do I revise? Yes, but it's not completely rewriting at that point. It's not rethinking the way all the sentences go. It's very much the novel gets built by the style.
So in terms of where I don't want to give away spoilers here, but where it ends up then, so do you see that point on the horizon of like, I've now written and rewritten my first sentence and my first paragraph, but I know I'm headed there? Or does it like organically flow as it's now clicked in for you and you just kind of go and then it reveals itself?
I think horizon is a great image actually, because it is very much like I see where I eventually need to go. I don't know the precise path that I take to get there. It's more like you're keeping that long view while also looking down to make sure you're not going to fall flat. And it's kind of it is very much like a double vision kind of a thing. And usually it's actually another great image for it is, kind of you make the points of a constellation, and then every time you're about to connect one star to another, you basically like think like, how do I connect to these two? And then once you do that, then you can connect the next one, and then you can connect the next one.
Interesting. Interesting. I did want to ask you a question about where we're at with queer literature, like your take on that, both as a reader and now as a writer with a very, well-received novel. Like, what is your take on, where we're at as queer writers writing the queer experience? Like, yes, there's been progress, and yes, we've got lots of book bans, but give us your wisdom on where we're at. Where would you like to see us go, too?
Well, I mean, I think we're at where anybody with an identity that has been turned into a marketing tool is at. We are, there. It's the same situation that you see across the board in the publishing industry, and I think that's a very different thing than talking about queer writers, because queer writers are in a really wonderful place. There's an enormous diversity of literature there, a lot of talent, a lot of wonderful things going on. But as far as the way that the publishing industry is approaching it and assimilating it and marketing it and buying it and, all those things, it's just as bad as everything else. And I don't mean that they're not buying it. I mean that they are using it to turn the author into a commodity, not the book.
Mm.
And that's the goal of the publishing industry generally, is to, how do we take an author and turn them into a commodity, using the book as kind of a marketing tool to sell the author.
Wait, unpack that more, because I know we get a lot of writers listening to the show,
Well, yeah,
particularly queer ones. So for those that are in the beginning of their careers, like, unpack that more for them.
Well, this is why social media has become such an enormous part of how publishers approach authors. This is why the personal essay kind of boom happened. This is why Goodreads is so enormously influential now. It's basically the publishing industry positions the author to be the product, and the book is the thing that supports the product. It used to be very much the other way around.
Yeah.
And part of that is, something that the publishing industry has always done, which is kind of being youth obsessed. Here's this 25-year-old amazingly talented new writer. They publish a debut novel. It kind of goes off like a bottle rocket, and no one ever hears from them again. And that writer is like disappeared. That's like a pattern that's happened over and over and over. But with kind of the paradigm that we have now, it's it's almost as though publishers have thrown the author at the audience and said, give them what they want. And part of that is essentially giving these people access to authors. It used to be that the publisher was the kind of go-between between the author and the reader, in the sense of, a reader would have to write a letter to the publisher in order to get to the author.
Yeah.
And now, if someone hates your book, they can literally tag you on Instagram and say, your book sucks, and is that really good for an author? Probably not. Yeah. Is it as easy as turning off your social media? Probably. But then where are you in terms of exposure to audiences? Because guess what? Publishers don't put money into advertising the same way they used to. They don't put money into marketing the same way they used to. They don't put money into tours the same way they used to. So it's an interesting, in the Minnesotan sense of the word, situation.
Well, speaking of giving people what they want, are you currently working on any new projects?
Currently?
Yeah.
No.
Got any ideas in the hopper?
I have many, many ideas in the hopper. I have 4 drafts of another novel that is still not done. I have a pretty strong idea for another work of nonfiction because I've also written that. I have 3 other novels after this other one, kind of not planned out, but I know what they are. Yeah, it's no shortage of work. It's shortage of discipline.
Well, how do we follow you on the double-edged sword social medias and websites to learn more about these?
The author access system. I am on Instagram. Currently, that is my drug of choice, I suppose. I mean, Twitter was obviously the biggest one for me, but I had to let that go for obvious reasons. And Blue Sky, I don't get it.
I don't either.
It's fine. It doesn't mean anything.
I haven't been on there in months.
And I do have a Substack that I feel guilty about never writing. So yeah, Instagram is probably the best way right now.
Instagram. And your handle is?
What is my handle? Patrick__Nathan.
Perfect. Oh, yeah. So, okay. So, Majors and Quinn on June 4th, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. In conversation with Mark Haber, who's also got a book coming out in October, a wonderful book called Lesser Ruins. It'll be a really great conversation. He's also one of the people who blurbed the book.
Fantastic.
It's right there.
Right there. And we will be seeing you again.
Yes.
We will be live at Pride. A number of shows on AM 950 will be live that weekend, Pride weekend. We will be going live.
Probably going to be raining.
Don't say that.
Based on the way things are going.
Don't say that.
I swear it rains every 4 hours.
No, don't say that.
All right, I take it back.
Please don't. Well, AM 950 is going to have 2 tents that we will be protected under with all of our gear and equipment. So we will be broadcasting live. Patrick will be joining us on Saturday, June 29th, I believe, at 2 p.m. I think I have the date correctly, but we will be seeing you soon. Patrick, congratulations, seriously, on the success of your novel. It was an absolute treasure. I really enjoyed reading it and have been telling everybody I can to get their own copy, which comes out June 4th, everyone. So, Patrick, thank you for being on The Gaily Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, everybody, we're going to talk some affirmations now. Great way to start Pride Month, June 2024. So joining me right now is Jess Vosseteig and their new book, which I'm holding up for folks. They can see the book cover on YouTube, Affirmations for Queer People, which is not only a delightful title, but the book cover is also delightful. For those of you who do judge books based on their covers, you're going to love this one. It is fantastic. You're going to want to go and buy it right away. So, Jess, welcome to The Gaily Show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't we start off with some introductions? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a Colorado illustrator, a queer illustrator. I've partnered with brands like Doc Martens, Lush, Miss Foundation for Women, Facebook. Oh, wow. I've done like some YA book covers, which is really fun. So yeah, I just make a lot of really queer, inclusive art, kind of centered on like feminism, the queer community, body neutrality and positivity are some of my themes.
Absolutely. So tell us about Affirmations for Queer People, because it is stunning to look at. I mean, just amazing. You're an amazing illustrator.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a So it's an illustrated book. It has illustrations throughout, and then it has all the writing of affirmations, and then an introduction with like how to use them, why they're important for queer people specifically, kind of like background on what affirmations are and how to like use them in your daily life.
Yeah. So, like, what was your inspiration for your book?
Yeah, so actually, like, they sourced me for this project. They kind of came to me saying we had this idea, and it kind of aligned with all the work that I have already. It's kind of just like my body of work in general already, so worked out good for me. But yeah, I like really wanted to do it because I think I would have wanted something like this when I was a queer kid. So something so positive and affirming is just like really important for me. So making something for queer kids especially, and adults also, was really important.
Yeah. How did you find then the writing / illustration process?
Well, the illustration stuff came pretty easily to me because it's kind of what I already do. So I kind of started with coming up with all the different lists of affirmations. There's like, I think maybe like 200 almost. So there's a lot of them in there. So I kind of had to start with the affirmations themselves. And then I picked a certain amount for the ones that are going to be illustrated. Yeah.
Showing some on YouTube right now for folks that are it's all backwards on when you're looking at it on, sorry, but continue, go ahead.
So yeah, I like picked a certain amount of the ones that I thought would be good illustrations. And so then I started with the sketching process for those, and then kind of turned those into like the full illustrations themselves. And then the other affirmations kind of just came after that.
What surprised you the most when you were writing it and or illustrating it?
I'm honestly not that much of a writer in my daily life, so I kind of was pulling from like my college days of like writing college essays. So I did a lot of like research on what affirmations are, where they came from, started with like the research process, and then kind of dived into like the writing of the introduction and like how to use them, why they're important.
Definitely. Was there one affirmation that held special meaning for you personally?
Yeah, I actually kind of did a little self-portrait in the book of myself. So it's one of the illustrated ones. It's being queer gives me strength. So that one's just really important to me because on my own queer journey, I think you just need that reminder of like being queer is a positive thing. It can give you so much strength in your life, in your daily life.
Right.
And like just existing is being strong. So that one's really important to me.
Absolutely. What advice would you give to other queer creatives who want to share their own words and art with the world?
Yeah, I would just say like you have a very important voice, so never stop sharing your work. We always need more queer voices. So your voice is inherently powerful as a queer person. So even if you don't feel like it's super important, it is. So I just say keep going, keep creating.
Absolutely. So who were some inspirations for you as an illustrator? Like what got you into illustration?
I don't know if I have like specific people that inspired me. I think it's just kind of always been there for me. Yeah. I always liked art when I was a kid, and I just kind of never stopped doing it.
Are there particular palettes? I mean, I love obviously the rainbow palette here, but are there typical palettes and colors that you most like to use with either within the book or in your illustrations, generally speaking?
Yeah, so when I kind of developed my illustration style a few years ago, I do it on the iPad, and I use the software Procreate on the iPad. Yeah, so I do everything digitally. So when I created my style, I stuck to like a certain color palette, and I've just kind of used those colors since then. So everything I make online, everything in the book is all kind of from that palette.
I love that. I am a little curious if I can ask some more questions about the affirmation process. Like, what was that like? Because I have in my own head, like, what I think an affirmation is. And I think I have behind me on my bookshelf there, like affirmation decks. But for you, as you were like diving into the idea of like affirmation, were there certain things that you found were like, oh yes, this is what affirmation should be?
I think I kind of just started with like some simple ones where I feel like I would want to repeat them to myself, like, I am queer enough, or like, I have people who love me, or like, I deserve respect. Simple things like that.
Yeah. I also, as I was reading it, I was like, oh, this would be so great to like, well, obviously, I think people should buy it and gift it to friends, right, as well. But part of me was like, oh, I want to like screen capture this one and like send it to a friend. So do you have them like on an Instagram channel or a TikTok or something, like the samples of them to like send out to people? Because sometimes I would just be like, I just want to send this to somebody, the individual one.
I unfortunately do not at the moment, but that is a good idea.
You need a card deck, you know? Have you thought about doing that? Like a tarot? You could be, I was also thinking about that. Like, if you haven't done a tarot deck, you would be very good at that.
I actually
your illustration
have done
style.
a tarot deck.
Have you?
Yeah, I didn't write it. Somebody else wrote it, but I did the illustrations for it and actually came out today.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What's it called? What's the deck called?
Yeah, it's called Tarot for You and Me. It's by Gary DeAndre, and it's like a queer tarot deck.
I literally did not know that was coming out today. That was literal, like something in the universe was telling me.
Honestly, meant to be.
I had a good reading this morning. Okay, well, Affirmations for Queer People. How can folks buy a copy for themselves?
Yeah, it should be on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. You can find it on the Simon & Schuster website if you want to find a different way to buy it. But yeah, it's Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all the good places.
Fantastic. And how do people follow you on social?
You can find me at Jess Voss Art. It's Jess Voss _art for Instagram.
Perfect. Well, Jess, thank you so much for joining us today on The Gaily Show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, that is our show for today. Thanks everyone for listening and or watching. Our podcasts are executive produced by Jim Pounds. Creative and accounting support provided by Gordy Erickson. Production, distribution, and marketing support provided by Brett Johnson, Chad Larson, Laura Headland, and Jennifer Ogren from AM 950. You can find us on social media. Search for This Queer Book Saved My Life on Facebook. We're at This Queer Book on Instagram and at _Gaily Show. Follow us on Instagram for preview clips from upcoming episodes. For The Gaily Show, check out our YouTube channel, unless you're watching us there right now. We're also on AM 950's YouTube channel and Facebook page. As always, you can connect with us through our website, thisqueerbook.com. On our website, you can leave me a voice message of the current LGBTQ books, film, or TV you're loving right now. And if you send me a message, I will play it on the air to share with our community. Go to our homepage, thisqueerbook.com, scroll down, and you will see an orange box with a microphone. Click it and share your message of what queer media you're loving to watch or read. And if you have LGBTQ entertainment news with a Minnesota angle, email gailyshow@thisqueerbook.com. That's GAILY show@thisqueerbook.com. And until our next episode, see you queers and allies in the bookstores.